What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing. On today's episode, we're going to have a good old time here. We're going to take a quick look at the standouts and takeaways from the Vikings, we'll call it a preseason game. And then, most importantly, we're going to talk through the preview of the first of hopefully a few more playoff games here as we wrap up the 2025 season. My bad. Let's start with the Vikings game. Yeah, I thought the Vikings game was a stinker, obviously, but there were a couple of bright spots. I thought the defense played pretty well, and remember, this was the Vikings starters that were playing. I thought there was a lot of fight and intensity. There was quite a bit of juice from the defensive line, which was encouraging. Encouraging not just for 2025, but also for next season, right? I liked the way the running game looked. I squint when I say that because it was also, like the only thing that worked in the game, right? Chris Brooks ran well. I thought Emmanuel Wilson ran pretty well outside of that, what I would call a cartoonishly horrible negative 18-yard run, as you guys all remember. Excuse me, I might be clearing my throat a few times during the podcast too, guys. I apologize in advance. Let's start with the takeaways on offense. Again, offense was a stinker in this one. The number one takeaway that I will go into is I thought the young guys on the offensive line played pretty well. Starting with Jacob Monk. If you guys don't remember who Jacob Monk is, the Packers drafted him last season in the 5th round, I believe. He was definitely overdrafted, I would say. There were a lot of people who thought he was like an undrafted guy, and the Packers took him in the 5th round. But, as do typically many of their offensive linemen they draft, he had a really high relative athletic score, really athletic guy. You could see it a little bit in the pre-draft. A lot of people talked about how he might be sneaky good for them. Then the summer came and he looked like booty hole both seasons, including this season. But he got his first actual game action, and I thought he played pretty well. He finished with a 76 grade from PFF. And, you could, again, I'm not an offensive line guy, right? But I could see even that I thought he was playing pretty well. He got to his spots really quickly. There weren't any bad snaps. He seemed to call protections decently well. We don't know who's playing center next year, right? We just don't. I think they might bring back Sean Ryan. I thought he's been pretty good at center. Maybe they dip into free agency a little bit. It's not going to be anybody super high priced. Maybe they draft a center. We don't really know who's going to play center next season, but Jacob Monk being good is important because whether he's the starter next season or a depth guy, him being good is important. So very encouraging. The Vikings have good defensive tackles, and Jalen Redmond is one I really like. He did really well in this game. I was really impressed with Jacob Monk. And again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but when we talk about the guys who do know offensive line play, they all said he played well also. So Jordan Morgan played well as well. There was the one sack that it looked like he gave up. If you guys remember, it was Clayton Tune jumped back. He was going to throw a screen pass to the right side. And I don't know why he didn't throw the screen. It was open, but he, hesitated, didn't throw it. And then, I think it was Dallas Turner hit Clayton Tune pretty hard on that one. It made it look like Jordan Morgan was the reason for that. But I do think that, Jordan Morgan wasn't expecting the ball to still be in Clayton Tune's hand. That wasn't his responsibility. So I would not put it on him. He didn't get any other pressures allowed in the game. Jordan Morgan is our starter next season at left tackle, guys. I'm telling you. And I've been saying this all season. I don't know how much I've talked about it on the podcast, but Jordan Morgan and Anthony Belton, they're going to be starters on this offensive line next year. And their development is going to be crucial to whether or not this team is going to be good next season. It's just that simple. If the Packers are going to be good in 2026, Jordan Morgan has to be a good left tackle, and Anthony Belton has to be a good right guard. Now, I know they could still pick somebody up. There's still 6 draft picks. I think there's a world where they draft somebody late that could have an impact. I'm not saying that's impossible. But again, we're looking for encouraging signs from this game. I thought Jordan Morgan playing well against a really good edge group, by the way, on the Vikings was really encouraging. Speaking of Anthony Belton, this was his best game of the season, both from PFF and as well as, the people who I trust that know offensive line play. That's really important because Anthony Belton's the one guy, the one starter that played in this game on the offensive line, and he played very well. And he's been playing pretty well this whole season since he's been in. It just hasn't been super consistent. So him being good, him playing well in this game, you like to see that going into the playoffs. I think that's going to be really important. The other thing we learned, Clayton Tune is not an NFL quarterback, at least not now. This was an audition for him as to whether or not he could be the backup next season, because we know Malik Willis is not going to be on the team. Does that mean that he's going to be cut automatically? Well, we found out the other day, it was yesterday, I believe, he was cut. And Desmond Ridder was signed in his place. Now, I do think, ironically, the reason the Packers did this is because I think they want Desmond Ridder to be their backup next season. And Ridder, if you guys remember, he was the quarterback that led Cincinnati to the playoffs back in, I think it was under Luke Fickell as well. I could be wrong on that. But Ridder's got some potential. He's got a good arm on him. He's got some speed. Certainly don't think he's going to be like a starter in the NFL, but if they could develop him into a good backup, that's going to be important. But we did find out Clayton Tune was released. He showed why in this game. He was really, really bad. Outside of the stuff there, the last thing I'll say before we flip it to the defense where there's positives, it was just a rough day. I do, like I said before, I liked what I saw from the running game, Chris Brooks particularly. The run blocking was good. Brian Flores sent 7 on multiple occasions. He was, as usual, a madman on Sunday. He's a phenomenal coach, guys. Brian Flores, there's talks about him maybe being the Raiders coach next year. If you guys have 3 wishes on a genie or whatever joke you want to make about 3 wishes, as Packer fans, we should not want to see Brian Flores back in Minnesota. He's probably the most important coach in this division. More important than Ben Johnson on the offense for the Bears. I think if Brian Flores leaves that Vikings team, that defense is going to be bad next year, or at least not good. And that's what we want being Packer fans, right? But he was on one on Sunday. Excuse me. So I'd like to see him out of the division if possible. Let's flip it over to the Packers defense where there actually were some positives. Starting out with the young edge group, Brenton Cox, Colin Oliver, and Barron Sorrell. They had 8 pressures between all of them. PFF didn't have as many pressures as Next Gen did. Normally it's the opposite. PFF always has more than Next Gen. They actually had Oliver at 4 pressures on 15 snaps with 2 QB hits. That was encouraging. We have not seen Colin Oliver play yet in the NFL. Him coming out, if you guys want to listen to my draft episode on him, they drafted him to be a situational pass rusher, a guy that was maybe a change up from what they typically have at the defensive end position. He showed what I would say some good bend in this game. He had some good explosiveness. He held his own against Brian O'Neill, who's a really good right tackle. Brenton Cox had the forced fumble. He had four pressures as well from Next Gen, only 2 from PFF. But you know, I've really liked what I've seen from Brenton Cox in his short stints as well. But Barron Sorrell looked outstanding. I think this performance from him was incredibly impressive. He had a couple of really good run stuffs. He was in on almost every run play, it felt like. He had a couple of pressures as well. He's somebody he's basically looked good every time he's had an opportunity this season. The play of these 3 guys may have sealed the fate for Rashawn Gary not being back next season. And that's what you wanted to see, right? Because I think regardless of whether these guys played well or not, Rashawn Gary's probably not coming back next season. He's certainly not coming back on that contract. And you kind of wanted to see somebody else step up. Now, hopefully we see LVN step up as well in the final game here. Excuse me. But seeing these guys play well, again, you have to be really encouraged for next season just because of that. Now, Trayvon Diggs, he also was a positive from this game. He had an 81 grade on defense, which would have been his highest grade of the season. He played 21 snaps, did not allow a catch when targeted. He had a pretty nice tackle on a run stop. I was encouraged here, right? He didn't make any big plays, but the Vikings receivers are really good. If you guys haven't heard of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, you do now. So seeing some positive from him, I thought that was a really good thing as well. Kitano Ladapo looked good at safety. Jamon Johnson played some pretty good linebacker in this one. He jumped that route. I thought in real time it was going to be a pick 6, but he jumped it. He just narrowly missed it, got a late jump on it. Tyron Hopper played, I would say he played pretty well also. It felt like he was in on every single run stop. PFF graded him poorly, ironically, but he's a sure tackler. Now, he did miss a few tackles in this one. I feel like I'm talking myself out of this one now, but there was a play where he missed a really obvious tackle. He got blocked out of a play on Jordan Mason's first big run, missed a tackle on a screen. So, again, he wasn't great, but there were little flashes in this game where you could see Tyron Hopper might be their middle linebacker next season. I truly don't know. There's going to be plenty of time to talk about this, but I'm not so sure that Quay Walker is going to be back. And seeing McDuffie play well this season. Sorry, Blankton, who I was about to talk about, McDuffie. He's played well in stints this season, and then if Tyron Hopper can take a step, which he certainly did from last year to this year, you like to see that a lot. Packers defense overall, they got 16 pressures on McCarthy and Brosmer, and I thought we talked about all the good performances just now. I thought they tackled well. They swarmed the ball pretty well. And outside of dropping that interception for the 900th time this year, I thought the secondary was in good position for the most part in the game. Nobody was getting just dusted in coverage. I know this wasn't the first team, right? First team defense for the Packers, but it has to have you a little bit encouraged for what Hafley can scheme up against Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, let's talk about the Bears game. Guys, we got a playoff game this week. I know if you listen to Madison Radio or go on Twitter for 5 minutes or wherever you guys get social media, you wouldn't know it, but the Packers have a playoff game this weekend. Coming off of 4 straight losses, the Packers are going to play a playoff game against the Chicago Bears. So let's dive into this a little bit. So I don't normally talk about betting lines. In fact, I don't really even know how betting works. It's probably something I'm most embarrassed about when it comes to my fandom. I truly don't know how betting works. When I see negative 135 and all that, I've only just recently learned what some of that stuff means. But basically, the favorite in this game has gone back and forth this whole week, depending on where you look, which book you look at, when you look. Sometimes it's a pick'em, meaning it's a toss-up. Sometimes it's the Packers 1.5-point favorites. Sometimes it's the Bears 1.5-point favorites. As of right this second, the one I saw on DraftKings, the Packers were favored by 1.5, but it's basically a dead heat. I do find that a bit odd. And I've actually heard arguments the other way. Chris Sims and Mike Florio were talking about this on their podcast this week, that they think the Bears should be favored by more. I'm like, it's clear that the Vegas odds makers don't trust the Packers defense. That's the only thing that I can explain that can explain this. And it had to be because of how bad they played against the Ravens. Now, outside of that game, and obviously what we saw in that game, nothing's really changed on the Packers side since they played Chicago a couple weeks ago. The only thing that's changed is the Packers are more healthy than they were during that game. I mean, you think about Zach Tom's going to be back. Christian Watson's back, healthy. Josh Jacobs is healthy, right? The Bears have also lost 2 games in a row where their defense looked horrible, got obliterated against the 49ers. And the Lions, they ran up and down the field on the Bears last week. Now, they didn't have the points to show for it, which seems like a theme. Yeah, the Bears' red zone defense is good, guys. That's one of the only good things about it. But I don't fully understand the line, this betting line, and why the Bears are favored or why it's this close. If you factor in Baltimore, it makes sense. And when you bring that context into it, I get it. So it comes down to whether or not you trust Jeff Hafley to make adjustments from that game. Personally, I do. Now, does that mean the Packers are going to go in and hold them to 9 points or whatever they did in the second game before the onside kick from hell, right? I don't. And we'll talk through it, right? But I think they're giving the Bears too much credit here, especially on defense. In that last game, if Romeo Doubs just recovers an onside kick, or again, you can go back and listen to the post-game episode there, if 10 other things just go differently, one of those 10 other things goes differently, the Packers win that game. And this is the gut-wrenching part, guys. If that game had gone differently, if Romeo Doubs recovers an onside kick, assuming everything else stays the same, the Packers would have won the NFC North. I'm going to pause for dramatic effect. Yes, that's exactly what would have happened. The Packers, if they win that game, they would have been 10-6-1. The Bears lose their final 2 games. They would have lost that one. That makes them 10-7. So that game completely changed everything. Now, the irony is the Packers would have been the 3 seed in that scenario instead of the Eagles, assuming there wasn't a trickle-down effect. Maybe the Bears, the Packers winning that game against the Bears makes them play better against the Ravens. Who knows, right? But the irony is the Packers were the 3 seed in that scenario if the Packers would have beaten the Bears. And that means they would have been playing the 49ers at home this week rather than playing the Bears in Chicago. So I do like the matchup, Packers 49ers, but I'd still rather play the Bears away. And that's, maybe you guys disagree whether you want to play the 49ers at home or the Bears away. I would rather play the Bears away, and again, it's because of the Packers defense being what it is, I would take this matchup. So it kind of worked out in and of itself, but when we talk about how we view the Packers season, seeing them at 9-7-1, losing 4 games in a row, it makes us feel worse. It's vibes. And vibes is why so many people are picking Chicago, by the way. But I think we'd feel differently if the Packers just recover the onside kick and they win 10 games. It just feels a lot better than 9 wins in the 7 seed versus 10 wins in the 3 seed. But that just shows you how slim the margins are in the NFL. And that's what's so gut-wrenching about it. Even if the Packers go back a few, to the beginning of the season, if the Packers don't get the field goal blocked against the Browns, we feel completely differently about that game. The Packers win 10 games regardless of the Chicago game, right? Or maybe they don't lose Jordan Love in the Bears game. Maybe then it doesn't come down to the onside kick. Or you could talk about the Dallas Cowboys game, right? The tie. The only reason that became a tie is because they blocked an extra point and returned it for 2 points. If they never did that, that game never would have gone to a tie. There's just so many things you could point to this season, right? But I'm not going to drudge on through that. You guys all know the drill. But let's talk about the Packers' defense against the Bears' offense and the keys of the game. Key number 1 is obvious, I hope. Stop the run. The last time these two teams played each other, the Bears ran for 150 yards. I say yes, only 150 yards, but where it kind of gets a little bit hairy is they averaged 5.8 yards a carry. So there's a strong argument here that Ben Johnson shot himself in the foot in this game and for not running the ball more. I can guarantee you guys one thing. He's probably watched that Ravens game just like the whole other world did, and he's going to probably want to run the piss out of the ball in this game. He probably should run the piss out of the ball in this game. Now, Halfley probably will sell out to stop the run in this game, and if he does, I do think the Bears are going to be ready for it. But if Caleb has to drop back 30 times to win, that's going to be advantageous for the Packers, regardless of not having Micah Parsons. Now, the biggest weakness is, and again, stopping the run, key number 1, the interior of this defensive line of the Packers is in really rough shape. They certainly didn't go into this season thinking that their best defensive tackle was going to be Colby Wooden. Even after they traded away Kenny Clark, they didn't go into this season thinking Wooden was going to be their best defensive lineman. They thought that they'd have Devontae Wyatt. But that's where we're at. The Bears' interior on their offensive line is outstanding, as you guys know. This is going to need to be the game of their life for Wooden, Brooks, Stackhouse, Brinson, and then Jonathan Ford, who actually I didn't mention him in the recap of the Vikings, but I thought he played pretty well. If you guys didn't know, the Packers signed him off the Bears practice squad. And Jonathan Ford was drafted by the Packers back in, I believe it was 2023. And I kind of liked him in the preseason a couple times. Seems like he may have developed a bit as well. But the sneaky most important players in this game, especially in terms of stopping the run, are Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper. If those two show up and play their best game, I do think they can hold the Bears' running attack back from explosive runs. Now, does that mean they're not going to get, chunks here and there? Yes. But I think they can at least limit those explosive runs if they play their best game. Now, against the Ravens, one of the reasons that game was so brutal for the Packers defense was Quay Walker played like cheeks. Horrible. And Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper was average in that game, I would say. So I do think that their defensive effort comes down to how well these linebackers play. Simple as that. Now, I do wonder if maybe we see some more 3 linebacker sets, maybe some more traditional 3-4 type of stuff. Whether it's McDuffie or Hopper coming in on early downs to help. We'll see. I think that would be a good idea. We'll figure that out as we go. I think the linebackers can cover the tight ends for the Bears. And I don't think Roma Dunze is going to play for the Bears. That could help a little bit as well. But again, I think that there's a world where they can play a lot better than they did against the Ravens. I think they will. Now, I think Evan Williams not being 100% in that game hurt them too. By all accounts, he's back to 100%. He even played in the game last week, which he shouldn't have, by the way. But I do think that that's going to help a lot. I think if the Packers can hold the Bears under 150 yards, that's going to be enough to win. Another key to stopping the run in this game is getting ahead early. So it's going to be on the offense to get an early lead, in my opinion, get this Bears team out of sync and out of game plan, frankly. And that's a sneaky key to this game. The best run defense is a good offense. You've heard this, probably you guys have heard this your whole lives. And that'll come back to a key on offense that we'll talk about later. But I do think that stopping the run is number 1. The key number 1 against the Ravens was stop Derrick Henry, and they couldn't do it. So can the Bears running attack kill the Packers like the Ravens did? Let's hope not. Key number 2, capitalize on turnover opportunities. Caleb's going to throw you one in every game. Simple as that. If and when the Packers have a chance to get one in this game, they have to actually get a turnover. Catch the damn ball. Even if it's a 4th down stop, though. You got to get it. And if you do get it, you steal a possession, you got to make them pay for it. When you have this kind of offense, like the Packers do, right, you got to give them more opportunities. Last week, yet again, Kitano Ladapo and the defense, they drop an easy pick. We've seen it all season long. I think the Packers really should have about 7 more picks than they do. And where would some of these games have been if they actually held on to some of these interceptions, right? I can tell you for a fact that Broncos game would have gone differently. We might still have Micah Parsons if Xavier McKinney catches that interception on the sideline. I don't want to put that out there because it's tough to talk about, but we'll leave it at that. The Packers have to convert on turnover opportunities in this game. Simple as that. I do think that turnovers are based on luck to some degree, and maybe we see a shift. I'm manifesting it. There's going to be a shift in the Packers' direction in this game, but we'll see. That's just what I'm hoping. Key number 3, get Caleb off his spot, more particularly make him roll left. So for all the faults in the game in Week 16, especially the way it ended, obviously, the best part was the way Hafley kept Caleb Williams in the pocket. He was pressured in that game more than he had been the whole season. And by the way, that was without Micah Parsons. And it was entirely because Hafley dialed up some awesome blitz packages. He got free rushers the whole entire game. And I think he can do that again in this game. I really do. We know he's got some good stuff in his bag. And Caleb, as good as he is at ad-libbing and getting outside the pocket, it's not sustainable for a whole game. And you saw that in Week 16. Up until the Packers gave the game away, I think Caleb was like 18 for 36 or something. He was at like a 50% completion percentage, and they were like 3 for 12 on third down. So again, had that onside kick been recovered, we would feel a lot different about that game and how this defense is played. And I think too many people are discounting that, how that game turned everything on its ass, right? Like I said earlier, the key should be to get Caleb rolling to his left, not his right. Ironically, the dude does not just sit in the pocket and throw. And when he does, he's not good, by the way. He's very inaccurate still. His completion percentage above expectation is one of the worst in the league. So, in my opinion, you make him roll to his left, because when he rolls to his right, he's deadly. We saw that in the first game. So take that away. Have a linebacker cover his right. So if he does rush to the right, there's someone who's closing in on him there, right? Do whatever the hell it takes to make him roll to his left. He's much less accurate to his left also. I personally think Hafley's going to have a good game in this one. I think the Packers defense is going to show up in this game, and they've heard about it. They've heard they've seen all the tweets. They've heard about the talk shows. They've heard you Packer fans talking shit about him for weeks, myself included. So show the hell up in this game and prove everybody wrong, right? Do it. The Packers defense, key number 4, the Packers cornerbacks against DJ Moore and Luther Burden. Now, I did put Roma Dunze on here as well. I don't know if he's going to play. We don't know as of recording this whether he's going to play. He literally fractured his foot, guys. Like, I would be shocked if he played, but, we'll see, right? I'm concerned about the Packers cornerbacks in this game. Obviously, we saw how bad they tackled against the Ravens, but even in that game, Carrington Valentine played really bad. He got benched twice. I do think we're going to see at minimum some sort of platoon between Trayvon Diggs and Carrington Valentine. Somebody needs to step up. Whether it's Diggs playing for a contract next season or whether it's Nixon playing a good Keyshawn Nixon game, they have to tighten up on defense in the cornerback position. I'm worried about Nixon, yes. But despite all the shit that he's gotten, sometimes rightfully so, he's played pretty well this season overall. He's not a bad corner. He's a lot better than people think he is. Does that mean he's a good corner? No. But if you can just be good Keyshawn Nixon here, I think that's going to be enough. Let's make sure we're communicating as well. Make sure you're assignment sure. And if you're going to get beaten, get beaten in the right place, right? Don't be beaten on a deep ball because you weren't where you're supposed to be. If the team just out-physicals you and they beat you at the point of attack or whatever, or the ball, where the ball's at, you guys know what I'm saying. That's fine, but don't get beaten because you were out of position. That's all I ask. And key number 5 is Colson Loveland against the Packers safeties and linebackers. You guys know I'm as high on the Packers safeties as anyone, especially if you include Bullard in that. We all should be that way too, by the way. But I'd be lying to you guys if I said I wasn't nervous about Loveland. He's been a revelation for this Bears offense. And last week he tore up that Lions defense, and he's probably Caleb's favorite target. I think he's their leading receiver this year. I'm pretty sure. And you guys know how I feel about tight ends against the Packers. It's never good. So please do not let this dude beat you. I think Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney can hold their own, but God help us if he gets caught up on Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie. I think that the Packers are screwed in that matchup. You've got to cross your fingers at that point and hope for the best, but they're going to make you pay if that happens. But let's flip it over to the Packers offense versus the Bears defense. This is where I think the Packers have a massive advantage. Key number one is to run the ball. If you guys have heard it all season, Josh Jacobs has been dealing with injuries. Yes, his knee's been messed up since midseason. I think it was that Giants game was where he messed up his knee. I think it's safe to say he's healthy at this point. He's certainly as healthy as he's been since the beginning of the year. The Bears' run defense is not good. Let's not forget the last matchup. I know Malik had some of the rushing yards here, but the Packers rushed for almost 200 yards in that game. And last week against the Vikings, the running game looked pretty good with the B-teamers in. So I do think Josh Jacobs in the running game, there's going to be places to go in this game for sure. I think if I had to guess, Dennis Allen's going to think the Packers' game plan is to throw it all over the yard like they did the first two games, but I think Matt's going to lean heavily into the running game in this one. I think I'm kind of second-guessing one of my little predictions at the end of the podcast. I think Josh Jacobs is going to have a really big game in this one. Bears' run defense, again, it's not good. If you're concerned about your defense, the Packers' defense, there's no better way to keep them off the field than to control time of possession with the running game. So I expect to see a lot of running the ball for the Packers. I think they're going to be able to play action off of it. And I'd bet the farm that they're going to be able to hit a couple of deep shots too off of play action. So that's key number one. Key number two, lean into the speed element on offense. The Bears defense, there are a lot of things. But one of those words that I would use is slow. And you saw it in the first matchup. We had, when Jordan, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, even Bo Melton, unfortunately he's out for the year, but Packers have some really fast receivers. Matthew Golden is super fast. Luke Musgrave is really fast, right, against linebackers. The Packers were able to light them up through the air last time. Now, Dennis Allen, he likes to play a lot of man coverage. We saw what happened last time he did that when Jordan was healthy. He diced this team apart. I think that speed is the biggest asset for the Packers. I think the Packers offense is just a massive mismatch for the Bears all over. And I just wish we could have seen how this looked when Jordan was healthy in that game. It's just unfortunate he had to get concussed from a-hole hit by Austin Booker. Anyway, key number three, don't turn the ball over. And that's another right? All you've heard on this podcast, other podcasts, talk shows, TV shows, everything, the Bears defense relies a lot on turnovers. Their turnover terrorization has slowed down a little bit the past few weeks, which is encouraging. But, Jordan cannot be greedy, cannot be stupid. He needs to play smart. I mean, going back to that 49ers game, right? One of the Bears' touchdowns in that one was a pick six from a tipped pass, right? We'll get into some luck in a little bit here, but Jordan can't give them anything easy in this one. The only way the Packers don't score 28 points in this game is if they lose possessions. Whether that's not converting on fourth down or fumbles or interceptions, whatever. Just don't lose possessions. Be smart, be careful. If you get a bad bounce, so be it, right? The Bears have gotten a good bounce all damn season. It happens, but just don't make it easy for them. Don't force a throw. Be careful when carrying the ball because they're going to try to punch it out, right? Just be careful. Just be careful. Key number four, convert in the red zone. For the love of God, let's get some touchdowns in the red zone. Last game against Chicago, if they just convert one more red zone possession and not go 1 for 5 in the red zone, they would have won that game. Simple as that. We've seen it this season at times. We've seen it during Matt's entire tenure, especially early. He's got a fantastic red zone package. And I want to see him use it in this game. Ironically, Nathaniel Hackett, former Packers offensive coordinator, he's actually in the building today, which is interesting. And if you guys don't remember the whole gold zone joke, they called the red zone the gold zone or whatever, and then like a shot at Austin Powers or whatever. I don't know the joke there, but whatever. When he was the offensive coordinator, the Packers offense in the red zone was really, really good. So maybe Matt's, asking him for some help, designing a couple of plays in there. But we saw some really good play designs against the Lions on Thanksgiving. There's just so much talent in this offense, right? As long as they don't go backwards on offense in the red zone, I think they'll be fine. Obviously, in the previous game, Josh Jacobs wasn't healthy. He really wasn't healthy in that Carolina game either, I don't think. I think that's part of the reason why they struggle at times in the red zone. Obviously, it was a key against the Ravens as well. He also fumbled in the red zone against the Bears last time. You don't see that very often from Jacobs. I think him being healthy might be enough to improve the red zone offense right there. But that's a massive key in this one. The Packers can move the ball. They're going to move the ball. But you got to finish, right? Let's kind of wrap this up. I'm going to summarize this podcast as we wrap it up here. I want to break it into reasons to be optimistic and then reasons to be pessimistic. So we'll start with the optimism first. Why should we Packer fans be optimistic going into this game? Well, for one, all but, 2 minutes against the Bears this season, the Packers have not only outplayed them, but they've beaten them. The Packers offense, well, at times they've been consistent in the red zone, yes. They've been able to move the ball on everyone all season long, with the exception of that Eagles game. And in large part due to the fact that Jordan Love was playing at an MVP level before that horrific deep ball interception to Pat Surtain, where Watson got hurt. You guys know the one. He was playing some of the best quarterback play that I've seen in my entire life, and that's not hyperbole. I've seen prime Aaron Rodgers. I saw Brett Favre playing at a high level. Jordan Love was playing as good as I've seen anyone play. Not better, but as good. The offensive line has been improving a lot as the year's gone on. Zach Tom's healthy. Anthony Belton just had his best game as a pro. Sean Ryan settled into center nicely. And Josh Jacobs is as healthy as he's been all season long, too. I think offensively, and you could carry this over to next week if they somehow win this game, right? Offensively, they can beat anyone. And I expect them to put up some points in this game. I really do. Now, for the defense, if we're going to be optimistic about the defense, we saw them hold this same Bears team to 9 points and no touchdowns for the vast majority of the Week 16 game. I personally think Jeff Hafley is an insanely good coach. He's a phenomenal coach. I think he's super smart, and I think even without Micah Parsons and Devontae Wyatt, with this thin-ass defensive line, I still think there's a lot of talent in this defense. And I think they can at least hold the Bears' offense in check, at least enough to outscore them. And I think to kind of just wrap up the optimistic side, I think the Packers are going to be motivated as hell in this game. They probably all felt like the last game against the Bears was stolen from them, not literally, right? Not legally. But they had it. They get an onside kick and they win. And they win the division. It's that close, right? They have to be fired up as hell to win this game. I think they want to prove the Bears are still little brothers in this one. And despite how talented the Packers are on both sides of the ball, it feels like all the pundits are picking the Bears. Vegas can't make up their damn mind. So if I'm Matt LaFleur and I'm all the assistant coaches too, I'm using that as fuel this entire week to fire up this Packers team. So that's why I'm optimistic. Now the pessimistic side, I'll start with something that's not super tangible, but I do have some data we'll go over in a second. It just feels like this is a cursed season. Whether it was the blocked field goal against the Browns, whether it was going 0 for 5 or 1 for 5 in the red zone against the Bears, the Panthers, right? Not punting, by the way, in the Bears, Panthers, and Ravens game and still losing, right? Lack of turnovers. Or whether it's the fact that 3 out of their most 5 important, I would say, again, I don't want to be too dramatic here, but they lose 3 out of the 5 most important players on this team to season-ending injuries in Wyatt, Kraft, and Micah. It just felt like this isn't the Packers season. And I'm forgetting a bunch of other stuff, right? There's all kinds of stuff we could keep going on about, right? But this was an interesting way of showing just how bad the Packers' luck has been. I don't know who made this, but it's a chart of net win probability added. So what it does is it looked at dropped interceptions by the opponent, dropped passes by the opponent on offense. So if the Packers are on defense, how many times did the offense drop the ball? Field goals attempted and extra points attempted. How many actually missed those? Right? And then the last one on fumble recoveries, which rely on lucky bounces, right? The Packers had the 5th worst luck in the NFL using those metrics. The only reason they were not dead last is because of the fumble luck. They've actually been a plus there slightly. I can think of a couple, like the Romeo Doubs fumble on the goal line against the Lions. They got lucky on that one. But to summarize a couple of those, right? Nobody has dropped a pass on the Packers this entire season. Whether it's interceptions or whether it be, I guess not, I shouldn't say interceptions. This is measuring offense there. But nobody has dropped passes against the Packers defense. That's crazy. They have the worst luck in the NFL from that category. They're second worst in field goal luck and extra points. So I want you guys to do a little thought exercise for me and look at the box scores too. Can you guys think of how many kicks have actually been missed against the Packers this year? Think about it. I can think of one, and it was that Commanders game right before halftime in week 2. So, again, adding all that up, the Packers have had horrific luck in 3 out of those 4 categories, and it just makes you feel like whatever could go wrong in these games is going to go wrong. Now, maybe the flip of the new year changes it, right? Turnovers are driven by luck to some degree. Maybe some of these balls start to bounce their way. Maybe they start catching interceptions, for Christ's sake, right? But this is one way of pessimistically looking at this game. Like, they just have not had good luck. The second thing I'll go into with pessimism is the mental mistakes and sloppy play. So we'll talk about this a lot at the end of the season. We have plenty of time to talk about the coach and all that stuff. But LaFleur and coaching gets blamed a lot, and it's partially true for the sloppy play by the team the past 3 years. This is still the youngest team in the NFL, and it has been for 3 years in a row. They're relying on first and second year players at key positions, right? A lot of guys don't even turn into stars until year 4 and 5 of their careers, right? And the Packers don't have a lot of those guys, at least not as many as some of the more recent Super Bowl teams, right? They have some, obviously, but the vast majority of the starters on this team are on rookie deals. And guess what? Shocker, young players make mistakes. They make mental errors, whether it's jumping off sides more than they should, running the wrong routes. That was huge last year. Blowing coverages, not communicating, making bad decisions, dropping passes, right? Dropping interceptions, whatever. This is part of the equation when you're trotting out a young team that doesn't have a lot of older veteran players. So, again, that's part of the problem why there's such sloppy play. But those mental errors and gaffes, those glitches, whatever you want to call them, they seem to show up in big games when the lights are bright. Kind of like last year in Philly. They played an ugly game. The spacing for the receivers was bad. Obviously, the Keyshawn Nixon fumbled the opening kickoff, which he recovered, by the way. I think that's still one of the worst calls of all time. That just can't happen in this game. And if you want to be pessimistic, you have to bring this up, right? This stuff can happen on this Packers team at any time. So obviously you just hope it doesn't happen Sunday, but that's a really easy way to be pessimistic. Last way to be pessimistic, you can't unsee the Ravens game. Up until that Ravens game, and what we saw on defense, especially after the Bears game, right? The Packers defense, they showed they could hold up without Micah Parsons. I still think they can. I don't think it's likely, but they can. But this could easily be a game where Ben Johnson, that offense, they just put the Packers in a blender the whole damn game. Outscore them, beat them to hell. And to back up the previous point, if this offense gets into slop mode, like we just talked about, or Jordan decides to get turnover happy, which he can do, or whatever we've seen at times, whether it's all the mistakes, not scoring the red zone, right? This defense is no longer good enough to pick them up. Even the games that have happened, look at the Browns game, the Panthers game, they held those guys to 13 points on defense, 16 points, whatever. This defense without Micah Parsons, Devontae Wyatt, it's not going to happen. So again, being pessimistic, this offense for the Bears just might be too much to handle on defense, particularly the defensive line against the run and pressuring Caleb with 4 against that Bears offensive line, which is outstanding, right? Those are reasons to be pessimistic. Now, my final prediction, I really do think this could go either way. I could see a world where the Packers win by 10 points plus. I really could. If that happened, if the Packers win 42-22 or something, I would not be surprised. But I also wouldn't be surprised if this was a 35-31 game in favor of the Bears. The one thing that would shock me, though, is the Packers offense doesn't score a lot of points. I just think they're too talented. They're just too healthy at this point for them to lay an egg. I think the Packers win this game 31-27. I think the Bears get the ball late again. Caleb goes down, and the Packers hold him out of the end zone. That's my prediction. I think a couple of small things to look for. In this game. I think Jordan has a good game in this one. I think he's going to throw for like 250, 3 touchdowns. We're going to be talking about him being great, regardless of the outcome. I think Christian Watson's going to have a good game. He's fully healthy. I also think Josh Jacobs is going to have a big game. I mentioned that earlier as well. I think they're going to run the ball effectively in this one. He's definitely going to get some touchdowns. Josh Jacobs will. Last prediction, though, I think Trayvon Diggs is going to get a pick in this one. I was tempted to say he was going to get a pick 6 in this one, but I do think he gets an interception. I think that Caleb's going to throw at least one to the Packers in this one. I really do. I think he's going to get a little sloppy. He's going to try to overdo it in this game. He wants to be the star. He wants to be the superhero, Iceman, or whatever they call him. LOL. I do think he's going to get a little sloppy in this game, and it's going to help the Packers out. So, all right, we'll be here next week, guys. We're going to wrap up the season next week if they lose, and we'll follow the same schedule next week if they win. We'll recap the game and then preview the next game, which will be the Seahawks if they win. So if you guys didn't know, the Packers, if they win this game, regardless, they will play the Seahawks in Seattle, which is going to be an interesting matchup. We'll preview that if it gets to that point. Otherwise, we'll review this game next week. Probably after that, I'll do like a season recap, and then we'll set up our off-season schedule, which I'm excited to talk over with you guys. Haven't determined entirely what that's going to look like, but lots and lots of content. The draft stuff will start before you know it as well. But I appreciate you guys listening. It's been a hell of a season. Let's hope we're doing another one of these next week. I appreciate you listening, like I said, and go Pack Go.